My memory of Les Miz was that it was on Broadway while I was in school, dreaming to be a Broadway performer myself. So I saw it probably 10 times while I was a college student at NYU.
My first memory of Les Mis, I was in like a children's production. It was the first musical I ever did. So it was like community theater, and I was part of this like made up Gavroche's gang.
It was the first big tour that I'd ever seen, and it was around the time that I just started singing and really getting interested in musical theater, and it was such a great introduction to what Broadway could be.
My first time was in 1993, I want to say.
Joe is a Les Mis super fan, so.
Super fan.
I went to see the show with my family when I was probably 9 years old or 10 years old. And I remember thinking, oh, I could be Gavroche.
I was in 4th grade. I don't know, I think my parents probably got tickets for me and my sister to go together. She would have been a senior in high school. And she took me, I went on a date with my sister to see the show.
It was my first Broadway show I ever saw. I was 14 years old, and we were in New York City. And my parents had gotten tickets to Les Mis.
He has only seen it a couple of times.
Yeah, I mean, no, I saw it. I saw it one time in high school, I think, because I grew up in Kansas City.
What's so crazy is I really never saw the show until I was in the show.
Wow. But I do remember seeing Les Mis come to the music hall there and being blown away.
I had gotten actually cast in Les Mis when I was in high school as Valjean, but I was a bad boy, and we don't need to go into that, but I got into trouble, and they knew that it was so important to me, and they took it away from me. So I got ixnayed from the production.
I was 14, and we traveled to New York City. I actually have my playbill from that original production that I saw, and I think Andrew Varela and Susan Varela are in it.
I first saw the show with the Chicago company in, oh geez, I don't remember, sometime in the 80s. And I was already completely in love with it. And it shot to the top of my list of favorite shows. And I think it's still there.
Mm-hmm. About 6 months after Les Mis opened on Broadway, I ended up seeing it for an Actor Fun night. And it was incredible. I got to see all the original cast members.
My first memory was seeing this gorgeous gal in it, playing Fantine. And yeah, I was hooked.
What about you, Kieran? When did I see? I saw you in it when I was a kid, and
You're a baby.
Well, no, because I remember it. So it wasn't.
And you thought Mom had died when Fantine.
And I thought Mum had died, and whatever.
Yeah.
So
Too young.
Cliche story.
Yeah, too young.
My very first show that I ever saw. First.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was the first Broadway show I ever saw. So I think I was maybe 8, somewhere around there.
We went on a high school drama club trip.
I was 13 on an 8th grade school trip at the Auditorium Theater in Chicago. I had the entire show memorized.
I mean, you knew it from...
In high school, once I had seen it 3 or 4 times, I read the novel twice. I'm a super fan.
Nerd alert.
Nerd alert.
I think the 25th anniversary tour, it came to Chicago when I was at school at Northwestern, and my whole voice class did a group trip to go see it. I think at the Palace Theater, probably.
I also saw it on a school trip. I was in high school, I want to say 9th grade, and we took a big trip. It was the end of a long day, and the culmination was going to see Les Mis, one of the touring productions, and I fell asleep. We were in nosebleeds. We were in the last 2 or 3 rows, Had no idea then what my future would be, but I did enjoy it while I was awake.
I went to see the show probably in 1997. It would have been the original Broadway production.
And my first memory is my parents taking me and my sister also to see the original production in New York.
I just remember being probably 10 and having season tickets to the Fox Theater in Atlanta and seeing it there and thinking it was a pretty big deal.
I was lucky enough to see the show in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I was raised, when it came through and played our town.
A tour of Les Miz came to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I lived about 40 minutes north of there in a very small town, and my dad got us tickets, and it was me and my dad and my brother, and my mom did not want to go, so I remember specifically that my brother got to take a date. And I think he was like 15 and it was like his first date. And I still remember that girl's name when it was Anna. And we went to
see a national tour of it with my parents. And my dad always had to kind of be dragged to theater, but he really loved Les Mis. Like, it was all he could talk about for a little while.
I remember sitting next to my dad and him like tearing up during some part, which part? There's so many parts you could tear up in Les Mis, and me just being like, wow.
My first memory of Les Mis was when I got a job on Les Mis, and then I saw Les Mis every day for 2 years straight. It was awesome.
I saw every touring production.
I'd heard of the show, but I never had listened to it.
I saw it in Fort Myers and Orlando and
I started listening to it when I knew I was hired.
Minneapolis.
But I did see the show once from the house in the Bushnell Theater in Hartford, Connecticut, and that was 1989. It was thrilling.
I had seen it 17 times before I ever got to audition.
I was a junior in high school. I was actually visiting my sister down at the University of Oregon in Eugene, and I remember sitting in the balcony behind a post and watching it, thinking it was the longest show I'd ever seen.
The first one, not this newfangled one. The
And that one was so much shorter, the newfangled one. We had to do the 3-hour, 17-minute one.
Wait, you did that one too?
Yes.
Oh, and I did it, and then they cut it down, and then we did the other one.
The first time I saw it was on the West End. I was studying abroad in London.
I saw Les Mis when I was 12 years old in London. I'll never forget it, at the Palace Theater. I got last-minute tickets. We were on a family trip. I went alone. I sat on the front row, and it was the first show I ever saw.
My first memory of Les Mis, I knew it was because I was involved in it way back in 1989. So I guess my first memory was it working in another theatre, and I'd kind of, I obviously knew the show, knew all about it, but I never saw the show actually until years and years and years and years later.
I first saw Les Mis as a freshman in college, but actually no, I had a mixtape. I was going to be Marius.
Oh,
and
man.
I listened to that tape, man, driving around in high school. So dumb.
And that was the same for me. I was a 14 or 15, I guess 15-year-old boy listening to Les Mis.
People were bragging about that they just got the original cast album from London.
As soon as the show came out, we were listening to the soundtrack. I mean, it was sort of a constant in our show. Les Mis and Phantom were always on in our house.
I loved the music. That's my memory, is just like literally sitting in my room as like a 16-year-old girl listening to Eponine and thinking I was her.
We went home after our performance and listened to the whole entire Les Mis recording, and that was incredible. I mean, it was really, really incredible. We all just sat there, geeking out to it.
My parents played the original Broadway cast recording in the car on road trips.
We listened to the cassette tape in our car for years after. It was like my Huey Lewis tape, we ran it out.
Driving around.
Okay.
Being a nerd. It's okay.
Music theater in my car in high school.
That's not dumb.
I had the 2 cassette London and Broadway version.
Nice. I had the CDs.
And
just saying.
Somebody bought me the cast album, the album vinyl, and I just about wore that thing out.
It died because we listened to it so much.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I also had the tape of the original Broadway cast, and we listened to it so much that it started to screech.
Yeah.
We had to get rid of it.
I listened to it, and then I first saw... Okay. So much love.
A heart full of...
Harkening us back to the old Les Mis days. Lots of kissing.
My first memory was as a kid in musical theater camp. Everyone was singing from Les Mis, basically.
I feel like it was a cool thing for everyone to sing Empty Chairs in high school. Like, that was the cool thing to audition with or
definitely sang.
feel moody with.
I was geeking out to the music long before I worked there.
Cameron Mackintosh really was part of the soundtrack of my upbringing.
My very first trip to New York City with my dad when I was a freshman in high school, he took me to see 4 Broadway shows, and Les Mis was the 4th and final show of my trip. And
I knew the music because I was a musical theater nerd forever. So I knew the music, but I had no idea what to expect visually. And I just remember
it changed my life. It really did, because it was so big.
As soon as those first notes hit, and I remember as soon as the first time they did the projection on the scrim, and I remember
it didn't have a happy ending, you know, and up until that trip I had only ever seen musicals that had happy endings. It was the first time that I saw something dramatic in a musical.
The idea of watching Valjean and Javert as these masculine characters, and I remember that musical theater to me was not something that was extremely masculine in general, and I remember thinking how it was like, this is something I was like, I could be interested in that.
It made me know that this is what I wanted to do the rest of my life.
I remember sitting in the dark up in the balcony, and
when the revolve and the turntable and the barricade came together, and it just like came together, and then the pieces came and I was just like, what is this?
It's such a beautiful show too. It's so much filled with so much love and such an epic show.
The finale started, and I looked down the line, and everyone was crying, and my drama teacher was just like a puddle. And I remember thinking in that moment, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to make people feel that way.
I felt like I was built to do that show for some reason. Like I was just made to do that. Actor, singer, you know, character actor, obviously.
I was amazed.
It changed my life. I mean, I was obsessed.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
It opened my eyes to something so much bigger, because I'd seen a lot of theater, but it opened my eyes to the grandness of what can be achieved with so much attention to detail and hard work, and it made me really want to do it. I really wanted to do it.
It set me on a path to do what I do today, and I'll never forget it.
Les Mis has been a huge part of our life and our relationship.
It's amazing that so many people keep coming back to the show over all the years, which has, you know, been the tradition of Les Mis for a long time.
I've never learned more from any show or any class as I did from that show.
My greatest theatrical experience in my life.
Thank you, Les Mis.
We love you, Les Mis.
I got to make my Broadway debut. I sang to this specific seat where I remember sitting when I was 14. I remembered exactly where I was. It was a flashbulb memory. So I would sing the finale to that seat for the entire run. It was cool.
Isn't that sweet?